as women endured a really dark history, and when our sexuality became very shunned and turned away from or kept hidden, or projected upon, it hasn't been safe for a long time for women to be alive and empowered in their fertility and sexuality.
Hello and welcome to Life Alchemy Podcast. I'm your host, Jose Reynoso, and today I share with you a conversation, an interview with Alexandra Durigan. This is one of those conversations that every few minutes I was having full body goosebumps and moments of insight and awakening and unlocking new potentiality in my consciousness. And I'm sure it will also do the same with you. Alexandra Durigan is the founder of Origin Pelvic Care and a woman's specialty registered nurse. She believes that hearing the body not as a symptom, but as a story, and that through the right listening, touch, and tending, we can cultivate regenerative repair and intimate vitality in our sexual and reproductive bodies through the wholeness of our womanhood. Alexandra, welcome to the Live Alchemy podcast. What a gift, what a pleasure to hold this conversation.
Mm.
When I stumbled upon your content, I must share with you that I have no idea. There was no preconceived ideas or even um, any background for me to be able, oh, I like this or I don't like this. I was like poker face kind of style. I was completely unaware that there was a whole world of pelvic care. But
Mhm.
before we dive deeper into pelvic care, how do you end up in a place of offering pelvic care?
Mm. Oh, I'm like tearing up actually because most people don't know this care exists. And that's a cultural severance that we've had for generations. Um, and so it's so beautiful every time I'm with someone who's like, I didn't know this existed, to now that our consciousness and our awareness and our bodies expand to, oh my goodness, there's this entirely other possibility for women's bodies and women's health and the pelvic bowl and this origin of life. And so I get really excited and a little emotional sometimes because it's so beautiful. And my journey began back when I was a really little girl and I was becoming of age. I got my menarche, this time of stepping into my womanhood, but this time where we've really lost cultural rites of passage to help young girls step into safety in their blossoming bodies, or to understand what the blossoming of their bodies are, to understand their rhythms. And because I got my cycle so young, I really found myself in this place of not feeling safe in the emergence of my womanly form. And that kind of was that first turning of a page of what ended up to becoming an 8-year eating disorder. And then eventually I went to in-person treatment. I had lost my menstrual cycle. I did not feel connected or safe in my sexual body. But then in-person treatment, my life kind of changed. And there was an amazing nurse taking care of me. And I felt cared for in my body. And like I wanted to choose my body and myself in life for the first time in a long time. And so another little bit of my backstory is I grew up in Rochester, Minnesota, where the nation's #1 hospital is, the nation as in the USA. Um, and so as I was starting to heal and as I was starting to learn what safety in my body was, and I had this amazing experience with this nurse taking care of me, it was like this lens of seeing my path forward of, oh, I can become a women's nurse. And I can support women and I can give women a safe place to be cared for. And that at the time was like the way that I saw a path of being able to do that. And because I was in Rochester and the nation's #1 hospital, it was a very celebrated and natural next step for me to become a nurse. And my healing journey continued. And by the time that I graduated and entered women's specialty nursing, I had this totally different internal perspective. And so when I was in the hospital, what I began to see was all of this undertended trauma of women's bodies, that so many women every single day were getting reproductive surgeries. So many women every single day were having birth trauma or birthing tears or emergency C-sections. And I wanted to know, like, why? Why is this our health outcome as women? Why is there a conveyor belt of women getting hysterectomies, their uterus removed, oophorectomies, their ovaries removed? Why are women not being celebrated when they want to birth naturally? Women with scars and tears, what is the care that their body is receiving within and around this? And all of the questions I had around how did we get here and how do we create something different, or what is the care that women are receiving, it wasn't able to be answered in the allopathic realm. So I started to continue to ask these questions, but I started to look in different places. And that's where I found womb massage. That's where I learned about pelvic care, and my world just changed. And I was like, women, the origin of life, our womb bearing bodies, our sexual radiant bodies, we have to care for this place. Why don't we have systems in place that are already doing this? Why don't we have huge integrated cultural reverence and acknowledgement of women's reproductive and sexual bodies, and how much these tissues and reservoirs and the intricacy of the pelvic bowl needs and requires care to be well? And how can I continue to be a part of reintegrating this? And so that has become my life's work, and that is really the foreground for birthing Origin Pelvic Care.
Mm. Well, yeah, goosebumps throughout my body just to relive glimpses and moments of that womb awakening. As you were sharing, I can't stop thinking about what were your peers saying or thinking when you were raising these questions, because um, I'm sure you're not the only one, but I'm sure also it's not that common. Hopefully, it's becoming more common to raise these questions. You were raising questions because it's such a norm to have C-sections or to have any imbalance in the uterus, in the womb,
Yeah.
that you were bringing these questions. Were you welcome when sharing these questions, or were you kind of like silenced or told to don't ask?
Yeah, totally. I don't want to say that it was intentional silencing. I think that it was just an honest lack of understanding. You know, I went to nursing school at an incredible nursing school to really support these emerging nurses to work at the nation's #1 hospital, to be the leading standard of care. I thought I was learning the best of the best. And I just wasn't, and we aren't. And women's health and the history of gynecology, which is something that I'm so passionate about, is so wounded. And gynecology formed after what I see to be and what I language as the loss of womb lineage, meaning modern gynecologic practices formed after years and years and years and years of witch trials, where we lost connection to the womb, to women's care, to the original practices of midwifery and women's keeping. And then these scientific experiments emerged, and it's now gynecology and it's now obstetrics. And without all of this wisdom that was eradicated during this period of witch trials, we are just kind of perpetuating trauma without fully understanding that we are. Allopathic care currently, at least in my experience, doesn't even acknowledge that the uterus, the womb, needs to be in center to be well. Like women go and get ultrasounds. It's like you have a retroverted uterus, you have an anteverted uterus, or your uterus is tilted to the left or the right. And women just go home. And menstrual cramps are normalized. Well, menstrual cramps are the womb languaging that it's literally imbalanced. Or all of this, birth trauma is normalized. Emergency C-sections. C-sections are even being sold as a really great option. We've lost connection to our pelvic bowls and to our sexual bodies, and our current allopathic care culture is built on this severance from womb lineage and deep womb understanding. And it's also severed from sexual health as whole health, this place of reverence for our life-giving bodies, this place of reverence for birthing bodies, this place of reverence for women and our sexual nature. And so when I started asking questions, they just honestly couldn't be answered. It was like, it's the way it is. It's like, why are you asking questions? Like, it just was like incoherent. It just didn't land because we didn't have this wider perspective of what can really be possible and what happens when we arrive in reverence for women's bodies, or we expand our perspective of what would happen if we as women were cared for more. I mean, culturally, we're just strung out, we're stressed, we're contracted, we're frail. It's so hard for women sometimes to perceive or to play with the idea that their body is worthy and deserving of being cared for. And I think, sometimes it's like we don't know what we don't know, but then where have we systematically been coerced to not know? So, yeah.
You brought up something very uh, relevant for me nowadays, which is the topic about witch hunts, and then you connected with a gynecologist,
Yeah.
which referencing back to what you said, there was the witch hunt time,
Mhm.
and we were women, but society in general was cut out from that womb wisdom or that feminine wisdom,
Yeah.
and then gynecologists start, or this branch of science begins spearhead and led by men.
Mhm.
So not to bring up a conspiracy theory or they against us, could it be that because it was spearhead from men from the beginning, it was completely misunderstood and misaligned with the true values and the true wisdom that resides within the womb? So by the time you get to your studies, they tell you not to ask, or not out of there's a plan, but it's so deep, it's generational. It's been generations of the medical and our educational system teaching misaligned practices of taking care of women. And for me, one of the biggest revelations as well has been when I started to notice that most gynecologists were men. And I remember asking my girlfriend, like, how do you do, like, how is it possible? How do you feel like in trust to go into a session with a man gynecologist? And in many cases, when I started to realize this in my teenage years, they're like 30 years older, 40 years older than the patient. So I feel that this is part of the divine feminine awakening, reclaiming health, reclaiming the energies, reclaiming spirit. Um, and in your findings of questioning, bless those questions you had, bless that curiosity you had. What is Origin Pelvic Care?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we could talk about the problems for a long time. We could do a whole podcast about the problems with the medical educational system, but I'm very excited about the solutions and the awakenings that happen through those questions.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's a long history, and men and women alike were were hurt along the way, And I really believe that one of the most anchoring foundational reasons that feminine healing, feminine empowerment, a reclamation of a regenerative possibility for women's bodies, for the womb, for our sexuality, all these things, it's supported by our men. It's supported by the presence of our men. You know, if our men weren't a part of holding this with us and for us, it would have to be done in secrecy. And there was many times where women's work was done in secrecy because it couldn't be anchored communally and collectively. I love our men. And I love the way that partners are wanting to know more about their woman's body, about their rhythms, about the way their sexual body works. So we're really in this exquisite time. And so the birthing of Origin Pelvic Care was my prayer and continues to be my prayer of more for our womanhood. And so Origin Pelvic Care is whole day, multi-day ceremonial care. And I really use the word ceremonial because our bodies as women are so beautiful. They are so sacred. And I know I've said it, but I'll say it again. They are the origin of life. And what happens when a care culture shows up in reverence and attunement for that, to really just give so much space to the body of woman in front of us. And so when I work with women, I take a whole body nervous system led approach to what womb and pelvic care can be, meaning that we balance the back body, and this is hands-on manual touch. So we balance the back body, we balance the hips, we balance the sacrum, the way that the nerves pour through the sacrum and innervate the deep pelvic bowl, innervate the womb, innervate the ovaries, innervate the cervix. The sacrum is such a deserving part of our body and a place that we can really hold, a place that maybe we fell on, a place that has also been deeply undercared for. And we move through the back of the pelvic bowl like that, and then we move through the spine. And then we turn over and we come down the front body, down through the breasts, unwinding the diaphragm where blood of the heart passes through to reach belly, belly that feeds body, belly that feeds fertility. We tend and balance belly, and then from softened, nourished belly, we come to womb. We support the uterus in realigning in center, tending the uterine fascia, the pelvic fascia, tending the uterine ligaments, the ligaments that hold the womb in place. And we deeply and slowly rebalance the center, because our womb is not only the origin of life, but it's also has incredible impact on our fertility, on our menstrual cycle, on our hormonal cascade. Our womb is meant to be in center. And so we're giving that center, that centering back. And then slowly after the womb, we come to vulva. We tend the deep tissues of vulva, vulva being an incredibly erogenous, but also zone of erectile tissue. The vulva is meant to fill with blood. When vulva fills with blood, womb is being nourished with blood, ovaries are being nourished with blood, cervix and yoni, whole pelvic bowl is nourished with blood when vulva is cared for. A lot of women also have a lot of pain at vulva or numbness at vulva, so we work with that. And then and only then, and always at that slow pace, that perfect pace of the unique woman's body, then and only then do we consent to internal intravaginal care and rebalancing. The yoni is woven with a plethora of mucosal membranes and fascia and muscles and ligaments, all which support the health and wellness of her sexual body, her reproductive body. And then we come to cervix. And so it's manual care, rebalancing the wholeness of the pelvic bowl in service again to our reproductive health, our sexual health, and then also our birth continuum. the way that we conceive, the way that we make love, the fertility of our body, the balance of our pregnancy, the balance of our birth, how easily baby can pass through the birthing canal, the postpartum period, how we recenter the womb after birth, how a woman comes home now to her mother body. So Origin Pelvic Care really lenses itself to the wholeness of womanhood, to this extraordinary journey that womanhood gets to be and what is possible in our life when we are deeply taken care of and balanced in our root space, because our sexual and reproductive health really is the foundation to our whole health, and deserves greatly to be cared for.
Hmm. From my very uh, small knowledge of women care, still growing, but after what you said, I feel like there's so much more we could be educated, both men and women, on womb care or feminine care. Um, I feel like this should not be like a one-off experience. This could, and the prayer will be to have this for all women, as part of their coming out of age, as part as they're coming into motherhood, as part of coming out of motherhood. It seems that it's like kind of like the crown to toes experience that women could be receiving, to be able to be more connected with themselves, to be able to awaken that softness. And you were saying so many small details that I I would dare to say like 99% of the women I know have never experienced any kind of care like that. And I surround myself by very conscious women, spiritually awakened in their path. But I think the most I've heard is yoni massage. That's like it all. And then there's tantric practices, but this has nothing to do with that. This is care. Why do you feel um, it's not so known? Are you pioneering this world of pelvic care?
Yeah, we have many pioneers that are slowly making our way
Mm-hmm.
through, and it is wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, wonderful to be a part of. But I agree. I mean, the most common thing that I receive from women is, one, I never knew this existed until I landed into your world. And that's usually followed up by, every woman deserves to know this is possible. And why we don't know this is possible, I mean, it just brings us back to our history, and our history is so valuable. It's so important to understand, how did we get here, and when we have an overculture currently that has endured this severance from sexual health as whole health, and where our women's primary health system was founded after a loss of womb lineage, that's how we got here. That's how we got here, is a very long time overturn from matriarch to patriarch, from the loss of medicine keeping and knowledge that women knew and held as sacred, that tribes and communities and peoples held and knew as sacred, and that whole people, the people, humanity, like oriented around. And we've just lost that connection of orientation to women's bodies, to the beginning of life, to the bringing of life. Um, and and as women endured a really dark history, and when our sexuality became very shunned and turned away from, or kept hidden, or projected upon, it hasn't been safe for a long time for women to be alive and empowered in their fertility and sexuality. It hasn't been safe in a long time for women to be empowered in their reproductive health, in their rhythms, in their life-giving rhythms, in this wider, slower pace of life according to those rhythms. We're making that repair in so many ways right now. And so I feel particularly humbled to be here right now in this resurrection and in this remembrance.
Mm, it is a time for sure.
Yeah.
And womb lineage.
Yeah.
I can get that there's been a history of passing down this knowledge.
Mm.
Um, is there any womb lineage that is still present from indigenous communities, some lineage from indigenous somewhere in the world?
Totally, totally. It's existent, I think, in all cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Mexican midwives hold beautiful traditional womb care practices. Um, Really, I mean, truly, in all cultures around the world, Africa has a beautiful history of sacred women's leaders and womb care practices. Donaligio was a shaman of Belize who kept alive womb practice for a very long time, and his lineage continues. It's alive. It's alive in all places. You know, women in the European cultures also have deep Celtic, beautiful womb practices. It's the womb is the origin of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
All parts of humanity have sacred traditions, and when we look back far enough, we can find them everywhere. And really, my personal work today in what I do is a prayer to bridge like cross culturally and globally, just this remembrance of the womb, of where humanity comes from, of where life begins, to revere and value this place, to take care of this place. When women in the womb are taken care of, the world is really deeply taken care of. And I'm just so here to support that
Mm-hmm.
as wide as I may, and to honor
Mm-hmm.
the many people who continue to support that as well.
Yeah, it's still alive, and now it's been incubating for this moment to be shared and to rise and to be spread. Um, when I was preparing for this conversation, I don't like to research so much because I don't want to come with any expectations, or I want to feel the essence of whoever I'm having the conversation with. But there was this red pill coming into my consciousness. I feel like pelvic care is like the red pill for
Mm.
truly the divine awakening of the feminine. Obviously, there's many other parts of this red pill. Yet I see from the work as you were explaining it, and what can I feel is that women, by reclaiming aligned uterus, reclaiming proper correct blood flow into their vulva throughout their body, being able to honor that, that's when real strength and power starts to happen. How do you see this practice supporting the rise of this new wave of the feminine energy?
Totally. Ultimately, infinitely. But it really excites me that you asked this. And when we feel our bodies as women, we come alive to the divinity that pulses through us. When we feel safe and inhabited and soft and balanced and vital and fertile within our sexual life-giving bodies, that is a generative place for us to be fed from, inspired by, and to live through moment to moment in our life as women. You know, our bodies have so much for us. And we are kept from our power and vitality when we are unwell, when we are contracted, when we are in pain, when we are experiencing irregularities or reproductive or sexual disease, when we are disconnected to the health of this place, we're also disconnected to our power and our aliveness. And every single woman, whether she comes to me for emotional harboring in her tissues and body, physical imbalance, infertility, reproductive or sexual disease, whatever it is, it's like when she feels her womb for the first time, she is like illuminated. She's like, here I am in my life-giving center. I feel my fertility. When a woman who's endured pelvic pain or numbness or just hasn't been that connected to her sexual body feels the beautiful unfurling of contracted, dehydrated tissues, and she's experiencing that aliveness, that pleasure, that sentience as real in living within herself. When a woman feels this, she knows something completely different to be true. She doesn't need to hear outside of her, you're powerful. She's experiencing it real time in her body. She doesn't need to mentally tell herself, I'm safe and capable. She feels the living, breathing safety in her body. It's so exquisite when these feminine embodiment pieces move from the mind to well-tended, awakened aliveness in our tissues. That quality of knowing can never be taken from a woman. That quality of knowing and connection changes everything.
Mm. As you were describing this, it feels it's the embodiment of the teachings that are often shared in a oral transmission or through text or manuscripts. This is the embodiment. It's no longer intellectualizing about what is divine feminine awakening or power. It's, you know,
Oh,
nothing else needs to be said, you know.
yeah,
And this sparks the curiosity in me. How was your first experience having some sort of pelvic care? Because I know your modality is years of experience of working with countless women, but I'm sure you had your own experience with another facilitator or a womb healer.
totally. Like I shared in the beginning, my journey began as a disconnected woman.
Hmm.
I was so out of my body. I resented my menstrual cycle. My sexuality didn't feel safe. I didn't know that I was deserving or that it was mine or how to be cared for. Like I was a disconnected woman. Um, when the warm, caring hands of another woman for the first time held my body, I wept. I wept and I wept and I wept. And it was like so much grief moved through, so many self apologies moved through, and just feeling that care and that presencing in my own tissues that this part of me is worthy, is deserving, is valuable, is safe. Getting to feel safety in my body for the first time, and like this part of me that has been so shunned, and in the cosmology of growing up as a Catholic woman was so sinful, and in the interface with the world where I didn't feel safe, that I could feel safety and health and beauty there. It changed everything. And I just knew like every woman deserves to have this experience. And we, since the beginning, since ancient Sumeria, throughout so many cultures globally, before our now modern gynecologic time, women were held by the hands of other women. People were held by the warm hands of women. And it just, the experience itself far surpasses what I could and can language.
Hmm.
I know my clients would just agree to have that moment of witnessing an acknowledgement where you get to be held and these hands are holding you and you get to remember and come back home and be so cared for. It changes everything. Um, so
Mm,
always humbled and I will never forget, that first time of wow, this is possible.
mm. What an awakening, and it's I'm sure looking back, that first encounter, what it has developed and grown into. It's
Yeah.
beautiful to be able to connect the dots and the prayers in that way. Um, you've mentioned a few times reclaiming the sexuality of the people, of the women you work with or in yourself. Um, what would you say are maybe some uh, stagnated thoughts, beliefs, or blockages that a woman could be going through that is preventing them from experiencing full sexual pleasure, which uh, maybe even to introduce this question, we know that it's been very taboo, this topic of sexual pleasure in general, even more for women, because there was a time not too long ago that women were literally only to birth babies. No fun, no pleasure, no enjoyment. And I feel this has been carried generational, and many women are shy of their sexuality. Many women are afraid of their sexuality, and then there's all these imbalances happening. So, a woman listening to this, what could be some symptoms, some energies that they could be feeling that could be warnings or alerts? Hey, there's some repressed sexual energy, and how would the Origin Pelvic Care help deal that?
Totally. Yeah. So many things. I was just talking in my membership about this on Sunday, which is kind of really present in my awareness as you asked this question. But for the many people who were raised Catholic or Christian or however, the cosmology of Eve is that Eve was banished from Eden for taking a bite of this apple and having desire. And I would say that sexuality and desire are really synonymous, right?
Totally.
And so even those who weren't raised in that cosmological origin story, enough of the collective was by choice or not. Um, and so we have this huge dissonance in our bodies around sexuality and safety, around desire and safety. And I even relate it to like taking a bite of an apple, being fed as a woman got us banished. So it reaches far and deep in our culture and in our collective. And again, when we have an overculture of care in modern gynecology that severed sexual health from whole health, well, now we think of sexuality as something fleeting, something less important. It doesn't have value in the health of who we are, but it
It's almost
does.
like the means. It's like the means to get something. It's not the
Totally,
whole experience in itself.
totally, yes. And so for so many nuances that we could just sit with for a long time, for days we could talk about the nuances, but the languaging in the body, and for me, this is like womb lineage of what is it to hear our body as story versus symptom. And so I'm always listening. And things that I hear often in the languaging of women's bodies when there's been sexual trauma or there's a disconnection from their sexuality, we're not feeling safe sexually, is one, if someone, your partner, your husband, whoever, reaches out for intimacy and your body contracts. If there's any sensation of aversion That's the body languaging, I don't feel safe in this part of me. If there's numbness at the vulva, difficulty orgasming or reaching arousal, difficulty lubricating, pain at vulva, aches, burning at vulva, deep penetrative cervical pain, or cervical ligament pain. Those are two different pains that are hugely unaddressed and misunderstood in women's bodies. Is where is this deep, sharp pain that like jolts me? Where is that coming from? Tailbone pain, if the tailbone is curved under and that is being hit upon penetration, whatever it is, when we don't feel aroused, when we don't feel connected to our engorgement, when we maybe don't know our engorgement, if we're feeling pain and ignoring it, if we don't have sovereign understanding of the quality and pace that our body, our sexual unfolding yearns for, and we keep quiet and we don't stand up for it, all of these are threads of this same kind of severance and disconnection to our sexual power. So Origin Pelvic Care, it's a space for the story of a woman's body and really ultimately her life to be presenced. It's a space where if the cervical ligaments are really tight, or cervix is low hanging, or vulva aches, or yoni is tight, or she hasn't felt lubricated, where we get to address the physical languaging of the body, that it's expressing itself through these symptoms and imbalances. It's telling its story. And ultimately, for me, all of these things are the body saying, come home here. You know, for me, cervical pain, vulva pain, an inability to lubricate, not feeling safe, feeling like your body's clenching or in a perpetual hold, not feeling safe in your sexuality as a woman and intimacy and connection. You know, all of these things are actually our body calling us home. Come love me here. And I'm just so passionate through Origin Pelvic Care to listen to each and every place. And when we hear that expression, whether it's expressing itself in the fascia and the tissue and the ligament and the muscle, wherever, we get to touch that place. You get to be touched with warm, caring, presencing hands for that part of you to be felt, for that part of you to be acknowledged, for your nervous system to again settle in and reorient blood flow to that place, to rebalance that long-term contractive holding pattern, and for a new possibility through wellness, through rebalancing, through deep care, through unwinding, through reintegrating safety. A new possibility gets to reemerge, and we get to reclaim in that moment the power and the permission of our sexuality and write a new story forward for our lives.
Mm. Stepping into a new timeline, literally by the rewirement of the body and touch.
Yes.
Um,
Mm,
that's beautiful.
yeah.
And how can this? I know you mentioned also C-sections, which I love to talk about this topic because this is something I've been learning a bit with some doula and midwife friends and seeing it in families or whatnot, my close environment, how C-section it's become the mainstream way of having birth. It's so convenient. You can schedule it. I hear people like, oh, it's scheduled for March 13th and it's a Saturday, so we don't have to lose work. Or I'm I'm in it's almost like a big joke. I feel like I'm in like in a virtual reality hearing women saying that, and not to shame women or blame or the men or the doctors.
Yeah.
How do we get to that place of like thinking that a doctor or surgery is much more efficient, natural, and healthy and safe than giving birth as the gods and the goddesses has given the power to women for as
Mm,
far as we've been existing on this planet.
totally. I mean, I really want to tenderly like preface that for some women, C-section is life-saving
Mm-hmm.
and enabled their baby to travel their perfect pathway to reach their mother's arms.
Mm-hmm.
And I value that so much,
Mm-hmm.
infinitely, deeply, widely, reverently. And kind of like acknowledging that and letting that set itself over here for a moment, so we can digest this other piece is that, I mean, that really goes back to the founding of gynecology, that goes back to the loss of womb lineage and the reverence of life, the sovereignty to acknowledge that no one can know better than a woman connected inside her body in literal moment to moment communication with her body, and that the intelligence of this woman, the intelligence of her womb, the intelligence of her placenta, the intelligence of her baby, and that visceral knowing is to be supported. When we have generations of women not feeling connected to this space, we've lost the capacity to hear the wisdom and to trust the wisdom of our bodies, to trust our nature, to trust our knowing. And when we don't have womb and pelvic care, and we don't trust our wisdom, we don't feel connected to our womb, to our cervix, to our yoni, to our intuition, to what we feel within our tissues and ourselves. And we've been indoctrinated to believe that a doctor outside of ourselves can somehow know more about our bodies than us. We're in a really dangerous place. And that's why birthing outcomes continue to decline, why all of these emergencies and birth traumas are ever more present. And when we're not balancing and tending the birthing canal in reverence and service to the health of a woman's pregnancy and her connection to the wisdom of her body, now we have things like imbalanced wombs that are going to hold a baby very differently than a balanced womb.
Mm.
That baby is going to engage with cervix very differently than they would if womb was balanced. That cervical tension is going to impact the cervix and cervical dilation much differently than a balanced and supported cervix. That a woman holding fear in her yoni from an undercared for sexual trauma, and that baby is going to pass through that place, but she's not intimate and familiar with it in her body. Like, we're taking on all of this undercared for nuance here, or the ligaments between sacrum and sit bone that cross pelvis and impact the space of the birthing canal are tense and imbalanced. And now we have a mid pelvic stall. We don't hear and tend the pelvic bowl in the womb. And there's imbalance, and we bring that into birth. We have very different outcomes than when the birthing canal and the birthing
Mm.
gateways are deeply cared for prenatally, preconceptionally, and throughout a woman's life.
Mm. Mm. It definitely everything ties to the previous stage. And as you said, a disclaimer, honoring doctors and allopathic medicine. I always believe for emergency, for certain circumstances, but of course, what I was referring is we see they don't even consider the option of most women like me don't even consider the option of natural birth because it's it it's just safer to do it with the doctor in a surgery room. And I see how the previous question about sexual empowerment and sexual awakening, it's the prerequisite to be able to feel empowered, to be able to know that you can feel, and that inner wisdom that unlocks as you start to awaken to your womb wisdom, to your yoni, to the blood flow, to the flow of energy through your body, is what will guide you to be able to give birth. And going back to the begin, to how we started about the witch hunt and severing the ties with feminine wisdom and gynecologists in current time, it's almost, there's like an amnesia that of course women can, and it's not even a doubt if they can, and they're the ones that know. As soon as we start to playing God and all our technology will be able to help you more, is when we start to see the imbalances. We could also talk about what imbalances happen to the child when they're not born naturally, in their immune system, in their cognitive functions. I met once a Kogi from the Sierra Nevada in Colombia, which is like the elders, the indigenous in the mountains, and they were saying, they were giving a little chat wisdom talk here where we live, and they looked at us and like, you guys, talking to the Westerners, one of your biggest errors is giving birth in a metal table with lights under a knife. It's like our women give birth holding and standing in their power, vertically connecting to the earth. You are severing the tie with the cosmos and the earth by birthing horizontally. And that was another big awakening. And as you share, obviously they have their own pelvic care, I'm sure, tradition and lineage. And nowadays we find ourselves with women that are feeling disempowered, that are feeling that they're not capable of, and it's just the beginning of perpetrating uh, this lineage of weak women and weak men. Because if you're born in that way, it also activates that. Um, so this takes me to my next interest and question: when would it be ideal for women to be exposed to this type of care? I mean, I would be like, this should be in every school. I don't know what age. Obviously, uh, I'm not an expert, but what age should women start knowing about this and learning, applying this, experiencing this, to ensure that as they grow, they are in their power as divine feminine?
Totally, totally. My answer to that question is now. Now, wherever you are, now. Um, and if you have the opportunity of having young girls or young boys, like everyone now. Um, and I just want to like preface or go back, I mean, to what you shared around like pressuring birth or inducing birth before we're ready, before baby and mother's body and womb and placenta and connection to creation says now. Like, oh, that birthing imprint, it aches inside of us. It aches inside of us, and we do carry that as people. Some of our deepest wounds, when we trace them back, can be followed all the way to the way that we were birthed. And I think about sometimes this like placental severance,
Mm,
you know, how we were separated from our mother, how we were taken out or birthed through her body. Were we just taken out by force? Were our first moments of life met by warmth and care and presence and loving hands, or something sterile and sharp and different? We have to tend that. And whether that was our birth story or a child that we know, we have to acknowledge that. That must have been a really painful way to come into the world.
mm.
And we can have this ache and this severance to life and this placental severance, to me, like I've sat with before, like war is hurt hearts with a knife causing blood. How is that any different than cutting the cord too quickly with a knife? Aching to feel our presence again to her, aching from that original severance that didn't happen with love and care and support us and staying connected to her, to the mother, to our mother, to the mother. Like, oh, there's so much tenderness that is deserved to be present around our birth stories and the way that they impact our life and life itself. And to hold reverence for babies and women's bodies and their intelligence that they've been communicating over 9 moons. And that baby in mama's body will know. And how do we support that knowing so that life can arrive and birth through this holy body with love, so that mama, as she bears life into the world, can be held by love and care, that life is supported. Oh, there's just so much there about so now I think we need this care now. And I say that with so much tenderness and honor, whether you are a woman already in your matriarch and medicine years, no longer bleeding, if you've never been touched like this, or held in a ceremonial care setting, or tended in your pelvic bowl, you deserve that now. If you're a woman who's been battling infertility with unknown reasonings, I mean, I even work with IVF women whose wombs have never been cared for, whose uterine bodies are completely out of balance, folded over, retroverted, flapped to the side, pressing on ovary, interrupting ovarian function. Women who've had failed rounds of IVF come and receive this care, have ovulated and conceived naturally after
Wow.
years,
Wow.
a ton of money and a ton of pain going this other route because their womb needed to feel safe and be balanced to perform its most natural function. Like, we need this care now. And if you know a young girl, how can you emanate through letting your body be cared for so that she can be mirrored how much her body gets to be cared for? Or I think about young boys watching their mama just like love her body, watching their father like love his wife and support her body. Like, wow, now please.
Mm,
If
mm,
you're a woman who had a traumatic birth and you don't feel safe in your body, or you've been enduring pelvic pain or imbalance or menstrual rate, like whatever it is, now you deserve this care. Um, yeah, this deserves to be integrated at every stage of womanhood. I dream of a world where women teach their daughters before they begin their bleed how to
mhm.
breathe into their womb and massage their womb.
I was just thinking about this, how many girls will be able
Holy.
to experience their first moons with less cramps or no cramps and not ashamed or in pain. I remember even as a kid in school, the girls were having a horrible time in their first
Yeah.
moons. And I'm sure because they had no information, no even techniques or self massage,
Yeah,
girls having self massage to help them alleviate or prepare themselves for every moon. Wow.
totally. Totally. Yeah, now.
Now. Hmm.
And at every stage, it would be so beautiful
Mm,
if you were a little girl and your mama taught you how to massage your womb, or deeper than that, that you always knew because you watched her
mm,
ancestrally, because it was woven into the way that we move and tend ourselves in life, and that we're mirrored that and we learn that because it's integrated
mm,
into our family, into our home, into the way we see our mama moving, like preconception, welcoming baby into your balanced womb. The endometrial lining is baby's first home. Ooh, the
Mm,
endometrial lining is the first home of our unborn lineage. Is this a vital, fertile, alive lining in a centered womb so perfused by blood, cleansed by lymph, innervated by happy nerves? I
mm,
ask myself these things, and how does that change how we are conceived, how we are birthed, what happens next, how families are built? Yeah.
now, now is the time. Certainly.
Yeah.
And for anybody watching this, for women watching this, or um, teenagers watching this, what could be some practices somebody could start incorporating? Because I know you have your daily practice. Maybe you mind sharing with us your womb temple
Oh,
practice, just to
yeah.
spark some curiosity.
Yeah. Non-negotiable womb massage. Non-negotiable. I mean, now, like, I wouldn't give it up for the world, but I tell all my clients, get a beautiful oil. Maybe a really nice organic jojoba, or a really organic, beautiful coconut oil, or maybe you mix a little jojoba and castor and coconut together. And that might sound like a lot at first, so maybe just get some jojoba, like start where it feels good. Um, and we can always widen and be curious and explore how delicious this oil can be, but make it beautiful, because our bodies are so sacred and they are so deserving. Our wombs are so deserving. And keep this oil at your bedside. For me, in the morning, I wake up and I turn and I grab my oil and I bring it to my belly and I feel my center. Before I take on the day, I feel my center. I just, ah, wow, here I am. Um, it's amazing how then that influences and directs and informs my day. I think womb-led living is like allowing the compass and rhythm of your womb to really lead your life. And when I'm nearing my menstruation, I'm aware. I know I got to be a lot more loving and a little slower with myself. My body's starting to settle. She's preparing to bleed. What am I going to need to support that, nurture that, tend to that, be aware of that throughout my day? After she bleeds, wow, I'm connecting and I'm feeling more alive in my center. I could totally say yes to way more than I said yes to last week. That feels really good. And when we're aware of our womb and just connecting for ourselves, and like when I say this, I don't have an hour practice of womb massage. It's like 2 to 5 minutes. Some days maybe it's longer and I really hang out and it's 15 or 20, but like 2 to 5 minutes,
It's
even
doable.
one
Anybody
day,
watching this, it's doable. You don't need to
totally,
change your lifestyle. Just get a few minutes in the morning.
totally just feel your center. Even if it's letting your hands come all the way to your low belly and holding over your womb, and you just give that part of you one breath, just acknowledging your center. I think one of the most amazing things that I love knowing about our nervous system is when we're upregulated and our body is in survival, our body, out of love and assessment of priority needs, actually innervates blood flow away from our reproductive organs.
Yeah, because it's not a priority to reproduce when you're in fight or flight, for sure.
Totally. Totally.
Uh-huh.
And so we want to be really well. We want to be able to feel our wombs. We want to be nourished in our menstrual cycle. We want to be nourished in our sexuality. Well, that requires nervous system regulation where blood flow is oriented into these places. And I think we would all be amazed, and I'm always amazed, what one breath into my center can do, feeling my hips can do to bring me into coherence, to sense from this place, for my nervous system to settle. 2 minutes of womb massage, and I'm feeling like really good. I'm like, wow, that
Mm.
was so nice. I feel so seen and acknowledged and
And it
cared for.
was 2 minutes. I was
Totally.
just thinking about how I, I, I was just thinking, I don't know where these things coming up.
I
Uh,
don't even.
um, I was just thinking like how many women that are experiencing infertility and they're
Yes.
trying like thousands of dollars of therapies and specialists and travel and more stress and even
Yeah.
the thought of it stressing their body. I was just thinking and visualizing how many women for 2 minute investment of their time in the morning. This could literally change their timeline. As you were saying, if blood is going to your extremities because you are in stress and it's fight or flight, but if you give yourself those 2 minutes, this 2 minute practice could be life changing. I'm sure it will be life changing for anybody trying it.
Totally. Absolutely. Absolutely. To be fertile, our endometrium needs to be infused with blood. Our priority as women deserves to be knowing and experiencing who we are as well nourished women connected to our bodies and our centers.
Mm.
We deserve that. And
Hmm.
when we're strung out and our wombs not being fed or perfused with blood and our endometrial lining's frail, or our uterus is literally imbalanced and so it's not being perfused and innervated the same way, or able to build the endometrial lining and maintain pregnancy in the same way, we deserve to, our life deserves to recenter around us and our womb and our sense of connection. And that 2 minutes, totally, just like you said, to let blood flow come back there, for you to settle in your body. Oh, it's like this deep softening and homecoming, and to then lead our day from that place, from prioritizing and knowing what that feels like, and being aware of, whoa, what pulls me really far away from that and what contributes to that, and how am I in relationship to those things. Our womb, she demands us to be taken care of, and she will show us very quickly what in our life is life-giving and affirming and what's not.
When you're
Oh,
able, daring enough to set that baseline every morning, as you say, it's a non-negotiable. It's some people watching this like, oh, I'll do it, I'll try it tomorrow, but it's not a one-hit wonder. This is a practice of this is a practice where you get to know yourself, and when you finally can start listening to
yeah.
that quality, you set the standards of what brings life and flow into your womb, into your divine temple, or what is depriving you from that. And I feel this, it's a win-win for all parties. Any guys watching this, or if you have your boyfriend, your partner nearby, this is so relevant for us men too. And this sparks the curiosity how us as men can benefit from knowing this,
Yes.
and what can we do to support the women in our life with this whole new paradigm of pelvic care.
Totally. Oh, there's so much that I want to say around this. Is it okay if I like historical context for a moment?
For sure. I mean, any information, any historical content to bring us out of shadows, because I think that one of the few cares I might know on my end is like Yoni's team maybe help gather some herbs or build the bench for the Yoni's team, but there's no books to reference for men. So any information, historical background is greatly appreciated.
Well, so because it moves me so much, and because, like I shared earlier, like men, I'm just speaking to you, like your woman's deepest embodiment, the healing of the feminine, like it is anchored by our men. it is possible by us as men and women, like collectively bringing this back. Because again, without our men, we have to do it in secrecy or it's not happening at all. It's not supported, it's not led, it's not sustained.
Hmm.
A man inquiring about his woman's body, inquiring about her cycle, inquiring about how she feels, giving her space to claim her sexuality, to explore and get to know safety in her body. Like all of this is a part of its possibility is our men. And I think when we kind of started here, but we'll just dip back for a second to expand our awareness, is that like when the witch trials happened and we had this mass massacre on women, we had this mass loss of womb wisdom keeping. Women were stripped of their sexual power and embodiment. Feminine work was pushed out as far as they can. I mean, women were burned and tortured for carrying this wisdom. That conversation is starting to be acknowledged. But the other part of that story that we don't hear enough for me is that, like, our men were there. Men who loved these women. Men who this was your wife, the mother of your child, this beautiful, embodied, expressed woman. Like, to watch her be tortured for her beauty and her medicine and her connection to herself and to spirit, like that is such a crime against humanity, and that burdened the hearts of our men over generations. And when men tune into this and reflect, just as women are like reflecting, starting to, on like, where did we lose our power, where did we lose this wisdom, as men like kind of let their bodies feel that too, it's this place where we get to resurrect the burning heart of our men who also lost, who also were hurt, whose hearts hardened, who didn't understand what was happening either. And it's this like coming back to this burning heart space and this burning root space in service to women, but to life and to our men, to our men's freedom, to the men who want to anchor this, to the men who want to love their women and lead their families. Like, we're all coming back in this together. And it is profound when men relight that burning heart and that burning root and stand and anchor in who they are as a provider, a creator, a space holder, a protector, a builder, a grower, like this magnificence of our men. Like we need you. And I'm also so sorry that your heart was so hurt. And so, where we are today as women are coming home to their power, as women's bodies are waking up this remembrance within them that they deserve to be cared for so much more. I think, again, just holding that space for your woman, anchoring that space and encouraging her to feel her body. And along that way, like, women might meet pain or grief or emotion and like, oh my God, I just bless our men when they hold it down. And they're like, I've got you. And women, you get to soften into him. Women's bodies are rhythmic. Our cycles are long, they're month long, they're seasonal. Getting to know her like that and letting her express in her body like that. I think one of the biggest pieces is knowing the feminine arousal pathways, knowing that your woman's body may take 45 minutes or an extended period of time to fully engorge until she's fully soft and filled to receive you. Can we stretch out our times of intimacy? Can we ask if she wants it slower or faster? Can your hands lead and meet and hold her body? Um, and if your woman, if your ears are hearing this first, ask your woman, do you know about women pelvic care? Do you know about women pelvic care? I heard this chat, this talk, I got this information. How can I support you in maybe accessing that for your body, for your health? How can I support you in that? Um, I think it's really extraordinary again where we're arriving, and I am just so grateful for our men being a part of it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's teamwork. Definitely, it's teamwork, and the
Yeah.
more us men get educated on this topic, the more we can anticipate also certain parts of the cycle and not maybe rush our women when they're needing more space in the morning. As you say, when you're going through your cycle, you need much more time to give yourself massage or whatnot, and learning how to be in tune with those rhythms. Because when you're called living under the same roof, we're
Yeah.
all affected or influenced by that cycle.
Mhm.
And I know besides offering uh, womb ceremonies, pelvic care ceremonies, you also are empowering other women uh, to learn about this as a lineage holder, because it's the time to spread the seeds. How are you doing this?
Yes. So I have my main work, which is hands-on in-person care. But then I have an online membership where women can come and learn all about their bodies and how to touch and tend their bodies. We talk all things reproductive health, sexuality, the birth continuum, and all things womanhood. And really what it is to be well-watered women, meaning fluid in our bodies, intimate in our bodies, connected in our bodies, alive in our bodies, cared for in our bodies. I also have an online class coming up on February 8th that I'm so excited about called Her Anatomy. And this is a class for men and women to learn your woman's anatomy, her arousal pathways, and to really lead her body and your love in this space. I think that this knowledge, particularly really getting into female anatomy, is so powerful for men and for couples.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that once women work with me, the next step is always, how do I bring this home to my honey? You know, and again, we are so grateful for our men, and our men play a huge role in that. So her anatomy is going to be awesome. And then if you are a woman who's like, I want to be a part of holding this work and serving my community, I have a practitioner training program that I am unbelievably honored to be leading, and the women in this space are just world changing women, and we're really resurrecting a new possibility for women's bodies and women's health and service to the womb and to life.
And it's very much needed because, as you say, your work is hands on. We need lots of women to be doing this work in
Yeah.
all corners of the planet, because every woman should, for what I've heard and learned today, every woman will definitely benefit so much from connecting to the body in this sacred way, and also putting a stop to generational trauma and to all those things we mentioned about the witch hunt and burning, and saying, I claim my body, I claim my sovereignty. So we need many more practitioners sharing this beautiful template of awakening. um
Yes.
to finish off, I'd like to ask this question, um mostly for people that are so passionate of their mission to change the world, to change the timeline of the world. You have 1 minute in public broadcast. All TV channels get completely locked out, and there's
Oh,
you on the screen, and all translated lifetime to all nations, all
mm,
women and men equally. What message could you tell to the world?
mm. That it is time for humanity and for us as a collective people to come home and remember the womb, the place of all of our origin, and our interconnectedness to this, and the sacredness of this, and how all of humanity gets to be nourished when we do this. Yeah.
Aho.
Yeah.
Mm, mm. Deeply grateful to be able to. I mean, I 99% of the information you shared, I had no idea, and I feel very uh, very empowered to be able to know this from the male side, from the masculine side, to be able to know that there is a reason why there's so much so many C-sections happening. Besides the ones we know that it's extreme case and they have to be done, they could perfectly be avoided if women connected to their divine temple, and how to even get there by connecting to sexual pleasure and allowing the body to relax and allowing the organs and different parts of the body to be in place and aligned. So I'm very grateful for your service to bring so much light to a world that is so hidden from most men and women alike, and for the new generations being born as part of your work. As you said, something that still lingers in my consciousness is, if women, which I'm sure they're starting to do the work, do this work before conceiving, then the first home of the baby to become is already going to be relaxed, trauma free. And this is already changing the prenatal timeline of the baby. And
Yeah.
of course, the perinatal as they come through, alleviating all those old traumas from previous incarnations into the now in bliss and surrender. And for sure, in their postnatal. So, wow, what a blessing to be able to know that there's a way. Sometimes we can question, is there a way to alleviate generational trauma? There's a way, and one seed of this way is pelvic care. So grateful for your work.
Jose, what a gift. Thank you. Thank you for having me and for leading this conversation. And it was just really a prayer and an honor.
Mm. Before we conclude, anybody wanting to connect with you, you've shared your offerings. How can people connect with you?
Yeah, the best way is going to be to find me on Instagram at Origin Pelvic Care. You can click the link in my bio and see all things happening, whether you want to come for care, whether you want to join the membership and bring your hands to your body and learn about your body, whether you want to train as a practitioner of this work. Everything is really going to live there. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Alexandra. I'm very blessed, and I'm very excited to see what women and men alike say after getting enlightened by this conversation. Thank you
Mm.
very much.